Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, visit them at a Hamfest near you or call 920-435-2973 or online at pl-259.com.
It's Ham Radio with Neil Rapp. Here we go. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Call in, let's talk. Neil's your guy. Ham Talk Live. Here we go on Ham Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 104. The Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, recorded live on Thursday, March 1st, 2018. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Andy Milluzzi, KK4LWR, and we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week here on the show, Michael Coulter, W8CI, was here to talk about the progress of changes coming to this year's Dayton Hamvention. So if you missed the show, you can listen anytime. You just go to hamtalklive.com and you can listen right there live on demand, or you can catch us on a podcast. That's some services like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeart Podcasts, Google Play, or TuneIn or SoundCloud. We're also available on YouTube. You can subscribe to us at all of those as well, and it'll show up on your phone every single week. So get your questions ready to go about the colleges, and after we talk to Andy for a little bit, you can give us a call. I'll go ahead and give you the phone number. It's 812-NET-HAM-1. That's 812-638-4261. We're not ready for calls just yet. We're going to talk to Andy for a few minutes first, and then we will take a break, and then we'll come back and take your calls. But that's the number to have ready, 812-638-4261. You can also Skype us. You can find us at Ham Talk Live on Skype, and you can tweet us. Our Twitter handle is at Ham Talk Live. And so I'll be back with Andy right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you in part by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the Ham's dime store since 1978. When you need connectors, mobile and handheld antennas, cables, or adapters, visit Scott or Jill at a Hamfest near you. Or you can order online at pl-259.com or call 920-435-2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, SMA adapters, audio cables, soldering supplies, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even used on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics carries MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro products. And don't miss their 0% off sale going on now. Tower Electronics, online at pl-259.com, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
The early bird may get the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. You're listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Thanks to Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show again tonight. They help bring you Ham Talk Live each and every week. This weekend, they'll be at the Cave City, Kentucky Hamfest on Saturday, and Toledo, Ohio on March 18th. April 6th and 7th, they'll be in Belton, Texas, and on April 7th, they'll also be in Staunton, Wisconsin. So catch them at a ham fest near you, or give them a call at 920-435-2973, or visit them online at pl-259.com. Tell them you heard it on Ham Talk Live, and thanks to them for all they do for us here. And tonight on the show is Andy Milluzzi, KK5LWR. He's the past president of the Gator Amateur Radio Club at the University of Florida in Gainesville. He's currently a systems engineer for Walt Disney Parks and Resorts in Florida. Andy became a ham in 2012 at the coaxing of his brother Anthony, KD8RTT. Andy's undergraduate work was down the road from me in Terre Haute, Indiana, at the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, and he recently received a Master of Science and PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Florida. Andy is originally from Westlake, Ohio, which is just west of Cleveland, and has lived in Redmond, Washington, and Austin, Texas, in addition to his 2 college stops. And Andy is a key leader in the ARRL, Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, a group that has been formed to share ideas and promote and rejuvenate amateur radio clubs in colleges and universities in North America. And a few years ago, we even had a chance to publish an article in QST about School Club Roundup, or more like Andy did, and I sent him some stuff, and so did Troy. So, Andy, good evening, and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and been talking to several of the people in the CARI field, and wanted to get you in here this evening and talk a little more specifically about it. So why don't you tell us about CARI and how that came about?
Yeah, so the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative under the American Radio Relay League really sort of came out of a sort of a grassroots grouping on Facebook. So Sterling, fellow ham, he started a Facebook group just for college clubs to, talk about the problems of, college amateur radio. It's a unique beast because in today's society, students are walking around with radios in their pocket, but they don't really realize it. They all got cell phones, and they assume they can call anywhere in the world and do pretty much anything with them. And, that like the technology is accessible to everyone, but, they don't really realize sort of the art and the science behind it. So clubs have been, some are stronger, some are weaker, and it just sort of went by student interest. So, we've all sort of struggled there. When I led the Gator Amateur Radio Club at UF, we'd have some good years and we'd have some rough years in terms of student involvement. So this was sort of a forum for us to, group together. And then the league sort of came along and said, we want to, foster this. Part of the league's mission is to continue to grow amateur radio. And, college hams and even younger are really the future of the hobby. So they came in, sort of helped manage the page, has also given a lot of PR boost to it, and really sort of made it loud, especially dating back now over a year now, and making it loud so that we sort of have some funding behind it as well as some PR to make it happen. And that came really through the Ed Schneider gift to the league, which in his call is W1 YSM, and he came from Yale Medical School, and he worked with Tom Gallagher, and they sort of started this endowment for college clubs with the league, and that sort of has kickstarted everything. And so far we've had really some amazing growth. The Facebook group was just a few of us in the beginning, relatively close-knit group of people that sort of knew each other from other things, and now we're talking over 700 members in this group. And I was actually doing the numbers before Hamcasian, and from just the posts on there, it looks like we've had over 6 clubs form, or at least announce that they've reactivated on that group just in the last year alone. And I think a lot of that comes through having the support of that great group of hams to make it happen.
In the high school realm, I get a lot of questions, how do I get started with a school club, and how do I do this, how do I do that, and so there's some support activities that we do, which School Club Roundup, which you and I kind of met through, is one of those. But for the colleges, there really wasn't a whole lot there to start with, and so this group has kind of let people share ideas and what works and what doesn't, and you come up with some interesting ideas, and like Scott Westerman was on the show W9 WSW, and he was telling me about the APRS on the mascot for the college, and people could actually track him on football games, and find him to get a picture. And I thought, what a cool idea, and if some others had been able to share that, who knows where it could go, and there are just a lot of things like that. Small things that might spark an interest and give some exposure to the radio clubs on campuses.
Yeah, I mean, one of those opportunities is definitely the overlap with some other activities. Right now, it is very, very popular in the engineering field to look at satellites and to look at space. It's a really difficult problem to put something in orbit, and it's also really difficult to get spectrum to talk to your thing that you put into orbit. So amateur radio offers a really unique opportunity. And I know AMSAT's partnered with universities for a while now in making that happen. But even students on campus are using that as an experimentation platform. They're doing high-altitude balloons with APRS tracking, really just sort of starting to integrate the hobby in some really cool ways into other parts of their curriculum or co-curricular activities. Which I think is doing wonders for the hobby and bringing new people in. I know at UF, a large contingent of our group actually came from our SwampSat group, and we actually had 2 ground stations because when we launched the satellite, they wanted to have a backup ground station and all that. So, that was a huge motivating factor in terms of, making the club active and loud. So, this Facebook group really provides the opportunity to suggest those sorts of things or to coordinate things. Most recently, this past Tuesday night, technically Wednesday morning at midnight, on Talk Group 9500 on Brandmeister DMR, there was a college net, and sort of making that happen, new ways to connect with hams. So it's really done wonders for that connection. And then also like at events, being able to recognize hams, having swag special for college hams, and really sort of promoting, and providing schools with the tools to sort of make a club happen. It's nice to have, stickers or giveaway stuff when you do like a career fair or a student activities fair or that sort of thing, or for alumni. So, there's also been some of that, which has really been helpful. And there's been a lot of exchange of ideas on the group, which is just really what I think led to the success in the last year.
Excellent stuff. Now, we've talked a little bit about what the league has done to promote this and give some PR for the initiative and everything, and kind of come in. What other kinds of support is the league offering through some of this money that's come in from the donation that you were talking about, and what are some ways that ARRL supports schools that are out there that are trying to make this happen?
So some really cool things that have happened has been forums specifically targeted at college students at Hamfests all over. We had one at Dayton last year. We've had a couple now at Hamcasian. I know Boxborough has had a couple. So, the league has come out in force sort of saying, not only do we want to, give you on-campus tools, but we also want to give you, a forum within the ham community as well. And then also the league has provided, different materials for getting hams licensed. We have given away lots and lots of books at our talks. We've given away, operator handbooks. We've given away, licensing guides and all that, and raffled them off specifically, focused at college students, either to help college students, increase their license and move from tech to general or general to extra, or to use it as a way to get students, into the club. I think that those sorts of things are really invaluable, because if you think about the cost of a book from the league, it's $50 for the handbook, and it's a great resource. But again, going to the size of college clubs and the funding they typically get from their schools, that can be difficult to obtain. Unless you have some alumni or something like that to sort of donate that, it's really a difficult thing, and it really helps motivate the club to do different things. Getting an antenna, booking, like the Wires Classic antenna books are great for really motivating a club, and being able to give away some of that stuff at the different events has really been fantastic from the league's end. Just besides the PR of promoting it, but just providing useful materials that turn directly into student activities, and student activities is how you grow the club.
And let's talk a little bit about growing the club and maintaining activity from year to year. And that's something we were talking about just before the show came on, of how you maintain a group from one year to the next when, the turnover is pretty high because students are only there for a limited amount of time. So what are some of the suggestions that you've offered to keep things going from year to year?
One of the things that sounds like it would do really well but doesn't really turn into things is like regular meetings, or meetings just sort of for administrative or unstructured. Things that do phenomenal year over year is when you decide to actually do a specific thing and you announce that. So if you say we're going to make a 2-meter Yagi, a tape measure Yagi that I'm sure we've all done before, or if you haven't, you should definitely try it. But it's a simple, relatively inexpensive project. We would have 3 or 4 people show up to our regular weekly meetings at UF. We did that. We had like 35 people show up, and I'm like, where are these people coming from? They're coming out of the woodwork, and those sorts of things where there's something tangible and they understand and they learn something is really cool. Piggybacking on really new technology also helps. So like FT8 this last year has been huge in the amateur radio community, but also been huge in the college community because it's a relatively accessible digital mode. It's something that doesn't require the best antenna, yet doesn't take as long as like JT65. So college students were doing skeds and all that all over FT8, and I saw multiple schools posting in the Facebook group saying, hey, we're going to be on FT8 tonight, work us, and that sort of thing. And that really helps too. And then probably, the most awesome, way to include and grow your club, to include others and grow your club, is to piggyback on other events wherever you can. So tailgating before football games. I know there's been some great success down here in Florida. I believe UCF has done that a few times. I know at UF, we actually partnered with the other SEC schools. So we're talking like University of Tennessee, those sorts of things. And we would do on the SEC championship game, we would do a special event. And we get a lot of students that want to work that because it's a relatively low pressure thing to do a special event. And, it's relatively high visibility, and it gives you something fun to do, something to talk about with everyone, on the air. The Gators might not have been the strongest team the last couple of years, but, it was still something fun that you could to talk about. And, pretty much everyone loves college football, so it was an easy, instant connection for new hams. And I think that's, the biggest thing is getting a new ham on the air and sort of breaking down those barriers. And, building an antenna is great because you've given them a tool, which is usually a great way to start. But then the next step is giving them reason to get on the air and making them feel comfortable. So having a low barrier to entry like college sports really helps.
Yeah, and I would say, in the SEC, my beloved Kentucky Wildcats, that they could get involved in this, but in football, we're never in that conversation. So I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah. They're a confident game for the Gators. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. That's an understatement. Well, anyway, those are some ideas that are out there to help keep activity going, and we've also talked a little bit about just being out there in the community, and like we go out and try to talk to some of the elementary schools, so that those kids know a little bit about ham radio before they get to high school. And you were talking before the show too about up at UF going out into the community and always being there so that you're visible, so that when those kids would come to college, they knew what it was.
Yeah, we would definitely do that. If there's like the Boy Scouts wanted to do Radio Merit Badge, we would offer up our station, get them up there, get them on the air, that sort of thing. We do local marathons. Yeah, I mean, and that also drives club activity because it's something with a very specific purpose, and students will come out to that and they'll say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what I'm getting into. This is going to be fun. So, yeah, it's a great way to sort of build the future and keep a club active.
Some great ideas there. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll start checking the tweets and the messages and take your phone calls. So be sure to give us a call. We've got a couple of public service announcements to get in here, but we'll be back with Andy right after this word from the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting and Amateur Radio Newsline right after this on Ham Talk Live.
The National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting, located in Westchester, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati, is only 2 minutes off I-75. The museum is the former home of the Voice of America Bethany Relay Station. Tours are now available every Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see the control room, a 200,000-watt transmitter, and the most comprehensive collection of inventions by the iconic Powell Crosley Jr. Also on display is a huge antique radio exhibit and R.L. Drake's personal collection of most every Drake amateur rig ever made. This is a unique opportunity to see amateur radio in action and have a chance to get on the air from WC8 VOA. Admission is only $5 a person. The museum is located close to historic WLW-AM and tons of shopping and restaurants. Take a trip to the VOA Museum or visit us online at voamuseum.org.
Nominations are now open for the Amateur Radio Newsline Bill Pasternak WA6ITF Young Ham of the Year Award. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. Since 1986, we've had the honor of celebrating the accomplishments of youth in ham radio, and we want to know about your exceptional young ham. You'll find the rules and a nominating form by clicking the YHOTY tab on arnewsline.org. Fill it out, send it in, and we'll see you and an amazing young ham at the Huntsville, Alabama Ham Fest in August. Thanks, and 73 from Amateur Radio Newsline.
Join the conversation. Call us on voice with Skype at Ham Talk Live or give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Ham Talk Live is on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here at hamtalklive.com, and be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's time for your calls now. If you have a question for Andy, give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Or you can Skype us at Ham Talk Live or tweet us at Ham Talk Live. We've got a couple of comments on the website as well to get to, but first, we do have a caller on the line, and no surprise, Sterling, good evening.
No surprise. Hey, you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine. This is Sterling Coffee N0SSC that we were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Were your ears
I started
burning?
listening a little bit later. I think you guys mentioned the DMR net. It's kind of a funny story. We started that, a couple of us were up at night, at midnight. We were like, why don't we have a net? And we all kind of like polled each other on our GroupMe chat saying, what do we do? Echolink, DMR, Discord, or VoIP kind of things, and we ended up with DMR. And that was surprising because, it's a digital radio and there's a barrier to entry to that. But surprisingly, DMR is super popular. It's like hype. It's like everywhere. Triple E put up a DMR repeater. A lot of other clubs have been putting up DMR. It's kind of cool.
I think it's a good mix of technology as well as amateur radio. It definitely forces you to experiment a bit to get it right.
Absolutely. Like me personally, trying to put a code plug in my GD77, it's just a pain, and I almost bricked the radio. I had to call Radioddity to be like help, but I eventually got it fixed, and it's cool to have that challenge. I do agree with that, and they're also pretty cheap. But yeah, we had it at midnight. A lot of people came on, but there was a consensus that it was a bit late for most, and we turned the midnight net into an informal net, and now we're having it on Tuesdays at 6 or 7 or 8 Eastern, something like that.
Yeah, yep. And there's a group, there's an event inside the CARI Facebook page.
Yeah, so check it out. Yeah, I just wanted to relay one thing from Triple E that caught my eye today on their chat. Tonight they had a licensing session, and they had 15 applicants come in, and 16 elements were passed. Apparently, I think that math works out to 14 new hams. There was one new ham general who passed the tech and the general at the same time, and then an upgrade to general. So big round of applause for the W0 Triple E ham radio class and test session there. They've been also doing a PCB class that's been on their Facebook, and I've been poking it around on the Facebook group me on CARI. One of the really good examples of what can we do with this collegiate kind of ecosystem. I think the PCB class is like one of those perfect examples.
Yeah, it's really got good overlay with other sort of curricular activities, and provides a good low barrier to entry or natural sort of overlap with amateur radio. So yeah, that's been really fun to watch.
And it's all hams doing it too. It's the Triple E Radio Club doing it entirely, and it's KiCad, so it's open source, free software that you can download and learn how to make printed circuit boards and schematics and learn a little bit of electrical theory as anybody. You can go on the Triple E W0 Echo Facebook page and or pcb.w0eee.radio. is where all of the PDFs, presentations, and stuff is stored. So if anybody wants to check that out, please do.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, Sterling, and we'll keep you around here for a little bit if you are willing. We've got a few messages here from Troy Simpson, W9KVR, who's the trustee over at W9GRS, and they've been underwater. They've been out of school because of all the flooding, so he says he's drying out here. But one of the things that he noticed, the collegiate participation in school club roundup has gone up in the last few years, and he ties that directly to the college initiative and helped when the students are able to talk to some of those college stations, and Troy, by the way, says good to hear you again, Andy. So, there's some connections there, and I know, we always talk, on school club roundup in high school. We always talk to K5 LSU. We always talk to Dana down in the physics department down there, and so he always sends us stuff, and it's even a good recruitment tool.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I mean, for schools, especially like college stations, I know when my brother was up at Rose Holman and he was president of Rose Tech Radio Club up there, they were very, very lucky. Their station is like 5 feet off a main hallway. So they set up basically a public station and work school club roundup from the hallway, and, got a whole bunch of people passing by, and just interested just by, pure, it was going on in the hall while they were walking to class. And that's really a great sort of definite activity, going back to that, saying, okay, we're going to do this activity. And it's a low barrier to entry. You're talking to people that want to talk to students. And that really makes people feel comfortable. I have several YouTube videos up there, up on YouTube that show, new hams just getting on for school club roundup for the first time, and the fact that people want to talk to them, that people are very, very understanding of them being new and getting on the air. It's just a great way to break down those barriers and really drive activity.
And then another thing that I'm actually working on an article for the next edition of the National Contest Journal is the National Collegiate Championships, which was a contest within a contest. You had the colleges doing a contest on the North American QSO Party with live scoring going on in between. And I believe Georgia Tech was the winner on that one. But a lot of schools participated in that, and I'll be interviewing some of those and writing that up for an upcoming edition of NCJ. So it's another opportunity for colleges to get on the air and do a little competition.
Yeah, piggybacking on that NCAA rivalry, and like I said, I think all those are doing, really fantastic. And I know we've been tossing around some ideas. I know Sterling and I talked about it last year with Triple E as well at Hamvention about even potentially a college-specific sprint or something like that. So figuring out, the logistics of doing something like that. But, I think that the more activities like that, the easier it is to drive club activity, and I think that, again, I can't harp it enough. If you have good planning for an event and you are very, very specific and not just, come hang out at the radio station, that really does wonders for driving activity. And the more that we can provide as a community, I think the better.
Sterling, anything to follow up with on that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I also think we'll be having a couple more nets coming up, like an HF net for sure, but a contest, collegiate, college specific, and also just trying to get out more of the, I guess, college spirit into all of the contests, or as many as we possibly can, and intersperse that between finals week and test areas in the year where tests are more common than others. I think that'll be a super exciting event, or super exciting whole shift for the collegiate side of things. So yeah, for sure. And I really love I don't know, I'll just go back to the live streaming introductory things and that sort of stuff where we can all share it on the CARI page. Anything that brings us together is super powerful, and I think it'll make for a lot of new hams, a lot of interesting hams, and a lot of careers out of this too. I just gave a talk to American Public University System. They're an online university about the impact of amateur radio on my life as an electrical engineer, and the way what it can do for you as a STEM soon to be student, potential student, right? And it was super well attended, and it was recorded. I don't have the recording yet, but I can't post it because it was closing to their university. But I think I'm going to take that speech I did and push it around to places like Dayton, or I'm even going to Friedrichshafen. I don't know if I'll be able to get a forum at Friedrichshafen or Dayton at this point, but I do have that in my back pocket, and I think it's really important. Ham radio as a hobby is, potentially life-changing for good reasons.
And that's something we brought up at the very first CARI forum when we did it at Hamcasian last year, was the networking aspect of it. Because I know, for instance, I know my brother Tony. He got his, some of his internships because he was a ham, and that came up. And I know you're in a similar boat. Mm-hmm. And it's even come up for me, in interviews. People look at that and they go, "Oh, I'm a ham too." Or the best one is when they start, tapping something out in Morse code and ask you to. Fortunately, I did the CW Academy, so I'm actually much better with my Morse code. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And I think another way that it can really, change your life too is to look at the, scholarship dollars available. I don't think that we put enough focus on that enough. Both the ARRL Foundation offers a bunch of scholarships either directly from the league or coordinates with clubs, as well as the Foundation for Amateur Radio. And while the league's scholarships end January 31st, the FAR scholarships are due at tax time every year. So it's a very easy time to remember when those are due. And, a lot of those dollars, could really go to either hams that are active in clubs and, could benefit from that, or, going to sort of your wheelhouse there, Neil, students, that want to get active in amateur radio in college, or maybe were active in high school and, are at least interested in keeping it, going forward, that's a nice way to sort of give them a reminder when they have some hams help and support them in their studies.
812-638-4261 is the phone number if you'd like to join in. That's 812-NET-HAM1, where you can tweet us or Skype us. We have a few minutes remaining here, so if you'd like to chime in, please do. And Dr. Scott Wright, K0MD, reminded me that it's the North American Collegiate Championship. I didn't get the name quite right on that, but that's coming up in NCJ soon, so we'll talk about that in that forum. But again, the number is 812-638-4261 if you would like to call. What are some resources that are out there for a university that wants to start a brand new club or restart a club? What do you suggest for getting some equipment to get started on that?
I think the best way is to look at your local clubs and look at what, is in the area in terms of just the community itself. I know, for instance, in Gainesville, we have the Gainesville Amateur Radio Society, K4GNV, and that's, worked in partnership with the Gator Amateur Radio Club, W4DFU, for years. And I know most, college clubs are within likely a community of, really a community of hams. There's a lot of, professors or, just engineers or staff members at schools that, are hams, and it doesn't come up during the day, and there's more than likely a club accessible. So that's a great way to start getting on the air, is to just sort of partner with that club and say, hey, we want to, start. And really all you need to start a college club is, 3 friends, and register for your call sign with the FCC if you don't have one already. And, a cheap HT is enough to start, and you can sort of work your way up from there. There's a lot of resources on the CARI Facebook page in terms of just asking other hams how to do it, how to work through student government. Student government's usually a pretty difficult challenge for 3 students. So, having other, yeah.
And we
I
definitely
remember fighting that in the University of Southern Indiana and trying to get through student government. We finally got through it, but it did take a little while. Go ahead, Sterling.
The good thing about that, about having all these colleges in one place, is that when you want to start a club and you have to deal with student government, we have all these boilerplates that we've given for like funding or for club appropriations and actually starting and making the club a registered organization, that we'll send freely and quickly as possible, because we always need more clubs. I've also seen a lot of people ask this question on Reddit, the amateur radio subreddit. There's a lot of college hams on there that go through a painstaking process of like detailing their whole club's history and how they dealt with it, and following through and actually contacting that person. And I'm one of those people. There's been a lot of that with Triple E. Especially with our like tower upgrades and I wasn't there at the time, but the Double E building caught on fire, and so we had to strip every single tile out of the ham shack to get it deep cleaned from all of the water damage and everything. And I think they ended up getting carpet out of it, or maybe fresh tile. No, they got tile. But it's just feel free to ask, and somebody will be like, at least 3 people will be on you in no time, because all of us really want to help everybody.
And amateur radio is a very different hobby than a lot of college clubs. For instance, most of our stuff is like a capital improvement, right? We're going to put something on the building. We're going to invest in expensive radios. We're not buying pizza and T-shirts. So, that's a separate whole thing to navigate. Sometimes student government funds can't even be used for that sort of thing. So sort of keeping that, in mind. And that's, like Sterling said, if someone posts with those questions or wants to offer help, the CARI page is a great way for us to, sort of coordinate that. And chances are someone else has been through that problem before you. So it's nice to not have to work through the same problem 15 times.
Now, one of the things you guys just mentioned was social media and the connection to that. And Andy, we wanted to talk a little bit about some ways that we can communicate with this age group maybe a little better, to recruit those people and get a hold of those. Because in a confined environment like mine, we can, put it on the announcements and put it on the little TV show that's inside the school. But when you're on a university campus, it's a lot harder to track down even those people who are already licensed or have already been in a ham radio club. So talk a little bit about interfacing with those students.
Yeah, so the problem is that we got to make amateur radio loud, and we got to make amateur radio loud to the people that are, sort of younger than us, and they listen very differently than my generation. Sterling and I pay attention to way different things than what our parents paid attention to, and we pay attention to things differently than what current high school students do. So it's adapting with the time. So obviously, social media is this huge thing. People don't read, QST like they used to. They're going to consume it on a digital platform instead of the paper. They're going to be more in tune with Twitter. They're going to be more in tune with Snapchat. So making amateur radio loud is piggybacking on things that maybe aren't directly amateur radio related, but sharing that on social media and at least drawing the connection, getting that exposure. Recently, for instance, SpaceX had the Falcon Heavy launch. That's a huge deal. Everyone was talking about it, but the amateur radio community on social media was largely silent about it. Why? I don't know. This is something that affects amateur radio operators. This could help us launch more Oscars. And a lot of hams are naturally interested in space. As I mentioned before, the SwampSat club at UF was very interested in getting their amateur radio license because they wanted to put a satellite in orbit and they needed the spectrum. So when you're on social media and you're trying to promote, amateur radio, don't just look at it in a vacuum and say, I can only post about things that involve radio. Look at similar hobbies. A lot of hams are outdoorsmen and they love, going to the park and operating. Napoto is great for that. So if you see something, come up about a national park, share that. And I'm sure that will get, retweeted by more than just your amateur radio friends. And that really creates that exposure and sort of gives people the idea of, oh, this isn't, my grandfather's amateur radio. These are really, still an active, vibrant community that's out doing different and cool things.
And Sterling, you've got 40 seconds, but I know what you're going to say.
Oh, yeah, I bet you do. I totally agree. Big antennas at your organization showcase events always helps. We had a satellite aero antenna. We had CW in the background playing. E-Connection is our email listserv that we have for the whole university. And I'm sure most universities have something like that. And I agree, events which aren't directly amateur radio related and are supported by other organizations like IEEE. We did an Easter egg hunt where we made the Easter eggs into RF beacons, and we used little $2 receivers that we designed and built to receive them, or advanced or associates for computing machinery. We did a Wi-Fi war drive and got a lot of overlap between the comp sci department and the electrical engineering department. We built cantennas to detect the password protected Wi-Fi access points on the city. So that was a lot of fun, and it was a huge draw. Anything that has wireless, satellite teams, solar car, telemetry, is something. And we started a Mars Rover design team and did networking, and we got a lot of hams licensed because we wanted more power on our Ubiquiti Wi-Fi bullet. So things like that. It's a big draw.
And I set you up, but I set you up for Reddit.
Oh yeah. Of course, I always go to the Reddit and
and the Reddit meetups at Hamcation and Hamvention.
Mm-hmm. I think Reddit is one of the best ham radio communities on the internet. It's a bunch of really good people who are slightly sarcastic but always really helpful, and everything that is noise just goes down. It's like there's a noise floor at the bottom of every page because it's sorted by upvotes. Don't go down below the noise floor. Stay above the noise.
Yeah, stay above the noise, as Christian says. Yes. All right. Well, we've got to leave it there. We are out of time. That is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. But thanks to Andy Milluzzi, KK4LWR, for joining us tonight, and also Sterling Coffee and Zero SSC for calling in, and everyone out there for chiming in tonight and listening. And I invite you all back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Steve Waterman, K4CGX, and Phil Sherrod, W4PHS, will be here to talk about WinLink. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, visit hamtalklive.com. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.